I met a gypsy.
So Motocross Nations this weekend.
Yeah.
Team Oz, you reckon we can win our first one?
God, we've had a couple of amazing teams over the years, obviously. But this team is really amazing. So, God, I hope so. It'd be incredible. I can't wait to see what Jet does on the 450. I think it's going to be awesome. I've seen some footage and I was like, wow.
Ridiculous, eh? How close were they to doing Melbourne? It probably was Motocross Nations that really, or was it they weren't on the cards? Or I guess maybe Honda's stance probably.
Yeah, and I think you've seen like that statement went out and it just said they wanted to treat all their riders the same, and I think that's put an end to it from the start, which was a real shame because.
So Honda shut it down from the start with the Lawrence boys.
Yeah. So
it just wasn't ever on the table.
No.
Okay.
No, not really. Which was a bummer because from a fan's perspective, like fans want to see these guys, they're heroes. I thought it was really disappointing from the fans' perspective. So that's the part that bummed me out about that. I know timing-wise, there's challenges for them with regards to like Jet riding this 450 for the Nations, and there's definitely considerations which I completely respect. But selfishly as an Aussie and someone that wants to see them in our own country, I think that's a bummer.
Yeah, and I think you historically like to look at Chad until you guys, well, I guess 07, 08 for Super X, but it came and then it went, and it's like I feel like we lost a bit of the Chad Reed effect in Australia, and I think that he probably even felt that a little bit in his career, that he maybe didn't lose the Aussie fans, but I don't think it was the same level of support that you're seeing with Jet and Hunter now, maybe. I don't know if I'm off base in saying that, but maybe the general feeling of that I got personally from maybe just the people that I interacted with, is that Chad was just super American.
Yeah, and Chad is a very different character and always has been, where he's a very serious, like brutal competitor, which is amazing, and people love that. But the Lawrences are lads, they're Aussie larrikin, and they have an Aussie larrikinism flair about them that we also love.
Yeah.
So they're just different personalities, I think, and Chad couldn't have cared less who anyone got in his way. He was going to trample him on the way to his success. And I completely, love that about him.
Yeah.
And that's what's exciting about seeing him racing now, because
when
he came out to do our PR launch, he said, I'm going out to win. I want to beat Kenny. I want to beat all of them. And I'm like, I love that about you. That is so cool. He's not there to make up the numbers and just be like, oh, it's going to be fun to race again. Nah, that's not how he works, which I love. The Lawrences are completely different because, whilst I'm sure when they put their helmets on, they're that way also, but their characters are different. They got amazing senses of humor. Like, I think they're still kids, so you can relate to them. Like, young audiences love that about them. And so, they're very different, and I think that's why fans have just really got on board with their journey. Yeah,
and I think that a part of that is like the connection to country, though.
Oh,
and
totally.
I think that, and you're right, like that is the reason, like Chad, even, it was kind of one of the cooler things to come out of the podcast with him was like him explaining that side of like, I had to leave it all behind. Like I was trying to beat Ricky Carmichael. I was trying to beat James.
That's all he cared about, and I love that.
That's awesome. And I don't think that messaging was across to the Australian fans, and that might have played into it a little bit. But yeah, I guess the bigger point is like, seems like the Lawrences had made it a point to kind of keep that connection like as much as possible. And I think that, there sort of has to be a way that those guys are able to race in their home country. I just feel like it's crazy, crazy important. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I guess we already seen it with Chad that investment wasn't there because it couldn't have been there. It was made hard to be there. Also, there wasn't the races, but you did see a bit of a disconnect. And I think that the Lawrences, I just don't think that it's the move for them to follow that path because it's hard to get back and do those races.
Yeah, and Honda Australia is one of our partners, for the event here. So they obviously stand to gain by having those guys here, and would love to have them here, as with their Australian brands. MX Store, obviously Alpine Stars in Australia, and their other brands.
Yeah.
So there's other motivations as well to have them in the home country, which obviously hope that from next year that changes. We hope so.
And I think that's one of the Kenny brought it up brilliantly when he spoke with James. Is that like, don't you want me on a Honda? winning a world championship and going to these places? Like, is that my job? Like, if you zoom out and you go, okay, what is Honda's incentive to be in this sport? Well, if their best guy goes to these races, interacts with fans, wins races, wins championships, that will then sell more Hondas. Like, that's it.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. You know, Honda's a global brand, and the manufacturers are all global brands.
Yeah.
They're not, so they're not just in one country and not just in the US. So from on a global level, and when you look at what having those guys, in Australia, for example, what that does for the brands in that region and the same for other riders in other regions, etc., then I think that should be considered, and I don't think it has been in this case.
Yeah, it really seems like a bite your nose to spite your face kind of move, and then I think that that's where I guess it honestly made me feel a bit better when all this shit come out, because like I've been kind of harping on, and I think people think I'm a dickhead at this point. And I'm like, all right, can we see that there's some fucking weird shit going on?
I know.
Like, it was shocking for people.
Yeah. Because the reasoning we've always been told is testing time, budget. We know budget wasn't an issue because Kenny, vocally said that he was going to pay for that stuff.
It was the same with Coop too.
Yeah, right.
So I know Coop was like, I'll take care of it.
Yeah. So, and there's always been that, sort of thing
to fall back on.
Yeah, and that wasn't used this time, which I thought was really surprising. I was like, whoa, I didn't realize that was on the cards. And publicly to be on the cards. And it makes me question, like, and I mean, we know the answer to the question, but then it means that you can publicly ask the question and not look like a dickhead. Is like, well, what are you doing here? Like, who are you, right? Like, do you work for them? Like, do they, like, what's the relationship here? Because, like, you're globally, Honda, it's a global product, and you've got a national series that is holding a global brand hostage in a sense, but it's like they're in on it. So that's where I'm like, all right, well, now that all this has come out, maybe I don't look so crazy, but it's like, now also, is that the question we can ask? Like, are you in on it? Like, do you work for them? Like, I thought you were a global brand, and you got this guy that wants to go and win on your bike and these other places that you sell them. So yeah, I think that's where we can continue to push that message about, what we're doing. We see as a benefit for the whole sport. Yeah. In all regions, including the US or anywhere else. Like, our vision and our goal is not to take from anything. I just keep reiterating that fact because I think we didn't do a good enough job of making that clear at the start, perhaps.
Yeah.
And that's why the us versus them kind of thing has seemed to have come out, which, I never wanted that. When we spoke to those guys, all of the manufacturers and brands, which we did earlier in the piece, like I thought, except for one or two meetings that didn't sort of go well, I thought at the time that the message was pretty clear. Hey, we don't want to take away from you. We don't, and we're also not asking anything from you. All we're asking is that you allow riders to compete.
Yeah.
So we got to try and fix that, and I think I hope that we can do that because it's important. I think, like I said, it's the fans that lose, no one else, and the riders, because they've missed out on earning potential.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.